Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I've always been the black sheep of the family. Ever since I can remember, my cousins were the golden children, and I was just there. My grandparents never tried to hide their favoritism, but I didn't realize how bad it was until that Christmas when I was 14. Growing up, I was a quiet kid. I preferred reading books to play sports. And I guess that didn't sit well with my grandparents' idea of what a proper grandchild should be like. My cousins, on the other hand, were loud, outgoing, and always the center of attention. They could do no wrong in my grandparents' eyes. My parents weren't much help either. My mom tried her best, but she was always caught in the middle, trying to keep the peace. And my dad, well, he was a whole other story. He was what you call a narcissist, always making everything about himself. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Anyway, that Christmas started like any other. We all gathered at my grandparents' house, which always smelled like a weird mix of cat litter and mothballs. I never understood why they didn't notice the smell, but I guess you get used to it after a while. As we sat around the Christmas tree, my cousins were practically bouncing with excitement. They always got the best gifts, video games, cool clothes, you name it. And I tried not to get my hopes up, but a part of me still wished that maybe, just maybe, this year will be different. Grandma says, "Alright, time for presents." My cousins tore into their gifts, squealing with delight at each one. I waited patiently for my turn, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. Grandma says, "Here you go, kiddo. Merry Christmas." He handed me a package that felt light. Too light to be anything exciting. I unwrapped it slowly, aware that everyone was watching me. As the paper fell away, I felt my face grow hot with embarrassment. Deodorant, shampoo, body wash. That was it. That was my Christmas gift from my grandparents. I looked up, hoping to see some sign that this was a joke, that my real present was hidden somewhere, but all I saw were my grandparents' expectant faces. "Well, aren't you going to say thank you?" Grandma says. I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "Thank you." My voice came out as a whisper. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, a mix of pity and discomfort. Even my dad, who usually couldn't care less about my feelings, looked annoyed. Dad says, "Mom, Dad, don't you think that's a bit inappropriate?" "What? Every teenager needs hygiene products. We're just being practical." But as a Christmas gift, in front of everyone, I couldn't take it anymore. I mumbled an excuse and fled to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, trying to make sense of what just happened. It wasn't about the gift itself. I mean, yeah, hygiene products aren't exactly exciting, but that was not the point. It was the message behind it. The implications that I smelled bad, that I needed to clean myself up, and to do it in front of the whole family, it was humiliating. I stayed in the bathroom for what felt like hours, only coming out when my mom gently knocked and told me it was time to go home. The rest of the day passed in a blur. My cousins were busy playing with their new toys, while I sat in a corner clutching my bag of toiletries. On the drive home, my mom tried to make me feel better. "Would it make you feel better if they got your female cousins feminine hygiene products?" she asked. I almost laughed at the idea. As amusing as it sounded, it wouldn't make me feel better. I wouldn't want them to go through receiving such things as a gift in front of everyone. This wasn't my cousin's fault. It was my grandparents'. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Their house smelled way worse than I ever could. And yet, they had the nerve to basically tell me I stink. And it wasn't just this incident, it was years of favoritism, of getting blamed for my cousin's mistakes, of receiving clearance items as gifts, while my cousins got thoughtful presents. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't going to let them get away with this anymore. I started planning my revenge, and by the time next Christmas rolled around, I was ready. When we arrived at their house the following year, I had a big, beautifully wrapped box with me. My grandparents looked surprised. I'd never brought them a gift before. Grandma says, "Oh, how thoughtful of you." I smiled sweetly as I handed over the box. "I hope you like it." I put a lot of thought into it. They opened it eagerly, their smiles fading as they pulled out bottle after bottle of Febreze plugins, and migraine inducing scented candles. What's all this? Grandpa asks. Oh, I just thought your house could use some freshening up. To get rid of that cat litter and mothball smell. The room went silent. My cousins looked confused, my parents shocked, and my grandparents, well, they looked like they'd just been slapped in the face. How dare you? This is so disrespectful. Is it? I thought I was just being practical. Every house needs air fresheners, right? I could see my dad trying to hide a smirk. For once, he seemed to be on my side. Well, Mom, Dad, she's got a point. It's just a practical gift after all. My grandparents sputtered, trying to find a response, but for once, they were speechless. As we left that night, I knew things wouldn't magically get better after this, but at least I stood up for myself. From that Christmas on, my grandparents never gave me hygiene products as a gift again. They still played favorites with my cousins, but they were a lot more careful about how they treated me. And every time I visited their house, I made sure to bring a new scented candle or air freshener. Just to be practical, of course. I grew up in a small town in a developing country. Life wasn't easy, but we got by. My dad worked hard at a factory and my mom stayed at home. From the start, things were tense between my mom and me. I was always closer to my dad. We looked alike, had the same interests, and got along great. But with my mom, it was different. She'd get mad at the smallest things, and we never seemed to agree on anything. As I got older, I noticed how my mom would look at me sometimes, like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. She'd make comments about how I didn't look like her at all. At first, I didn't think much of it, but things started to get worse. One day, when I was about 14, we had a big fight over something small. I can't even remember what it was about now. Why can't he ever agree with me? It's like you're not even my child. What are you talking about? Of course I'm your child. Look at you. You look nothing like me. You don't act like me, you don't think like me. Maybe they gave me the wrong baby at the hospital. I was shocked. I'd never heard her say anything like that before, but from that day on, things went downhill fast. Every little disagreement turned into a huge argument. She'd bring up how different we were, how I must not be her real child. It hurt, but I tried to brush it off, and my dad would try to calm her down, telling her she was being ridiculous. Stop this nonsense. Can't you see you're hurting your own child? It doesn't matter if they look like you or not. They are ours. How can you be so sure? Look at them. They are nothing like me. These fights became more and more frequent. My mom's behavior got more erratic. She'd have these sudden bursts of anger over the smallest things. I started walking on eggshells around her, never knowing what might set her off. One day, about a year later, things reached a breaking point. It was a hot afternoon and I was hanging up laundry on our third-floor balcony. My mom came out already looking annoyed. You're doing it all wrong. Can't you do anything right? I'm just hanging clothes, Mom. There is no right or wrong way. Don't talk back to me. This is why I can't stand you. You always think you know better. I sighed, trying to keep my cool, but she kept pushing. You're not my child. You can't be. My child would respect me and would agree with me. Mom, please. We've been over this. I am your child. Just because we disagree doesn't mean, and that's when it happened. I felt her hands on my back, shoving hard. I stumbled forward, my stomach hitting the railing of the balcony. For a second, I couldn't believe what was happening. Then I realized she was trying to push me off. I grabbed the railing, holding on tight. My heart was racing. I turned to look at her, and the look in her eyes terrified me. She looked serious. If you're not my child, you don't belong here. She tried to push me again. I fought back this time, pushing her away and ducking under her arm. I ran for the apartment door, my bare feet slapping against the floor. I could hear her behind me yelling, "Get back here! We're not done!" But I was already out the door. I ran down the stairs, not stopping until I was out on the street. People stared as I ran past, barefoot and terrified. I didn't care. I just knew I had to get to my dad. The factory where he worked was about a mile away. I ran the whole way, ignoring the pain in my feet from the hot pavement. When I finally got there, I was out of breath and shaking. I burst into the factory, ignoring the security guard yelling at me to stop. I found my dad on a factory floor, working at his station. Dad! Dad! He turned, his eyes widened when he saw me. What happened? Why are you here? Where are your shoes? I told him everything. I watched his face change from confusion to horror to anger. Stay here. I'm going to sort this out. He told his supervisor he had a family emergency and left with me. We took a taxi home, my dad silent and tense the whole way. When we got to our apartment, my mom was waiting. Oh, so you came running to daddy, did you? Always taking his side. Enough. What's wrong with you? How could you do this to our child? Our child? Look at them. They can't be mine. They must have switched babies at the hospital. Listen to yourself. This has gone too far. You need help. Their argument went on for hours. I sat in my room, door locked, listening to the shouting. Finally, things got quiet. There was a knock on my door. Dad says, "It's me. Can I come in?" I let him in. He looked tired and sad. "I'm so sorry I had to go through this. Your mother, she's not well. She needs help. But that's no excuse for what she did. I want you to know that you're safe now. She won't hurt you again. What's going to happen now? I've thought about it and I am going to file for divorce. We can't stay with her, not after this. It's not safe for you." In the next few weeks, my dad filed for divorce and got a restraining order against my mom. We moved out of the apartment into a small place near my dad's work. My mom was ordered to get mental health treatment. As for me, it took a long time to feel safe again. I had nightmares about falling from that balcony, but slowly things got better. My dad and I became even closer. He made sure I got counseling to help deal with what happened. A year later, we were in court for the final divorce hearing. My mom was there looking smaller somehow. The judge asked if I wanted to say anything, and I said, "I just want to say that what happened that day on a balcony changed my life forever. Mom, I don't hate you, but I can't forgive what you did. I hope you get the help you need." The judge granted the divorce and gave my dad full custody. As we left the courthouse, I felt like a weight had been lifted. It wasn't a happy ending exactly, but it was a new beginning. My dad put his arm around me as we walked to the car. "You know, no matter what anyone says, you are my child. Nothing will ever change that. I know that. I know." I've always been a car enthusiast. Growing up, my dad had a small garage where he'd work on classic cars. I'd spend hours watching him learning about engines, suspensions, and everything in between. When I turned 16, instead of getting me a typical first car, Dad helped me buy an old beater that we fixed up together. And that's when I knew I was hooked for life. After college, I landed a good job in tech and started saving up for my dream cars. I bought this house about 5 years ago, and it was perfect, good neighborhood, spacious, garage, and most importantly, not part of the local homeowners association. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for keeping the neighborhood nice, but some of their rules seemed way too restrictive for my taste. When I first moved in, I made sure to get it in writing that my property was excluded from the homeowners association. The previous owners had some issues with the association, so they'd already done most of the legwork. I just had to finalize things. It was a bit of a hassle, but totally worth it in the end. Over the years, I've built up quite a collection. My daily driver is a Dodge Challenger, practical enough for work but still fun to drive. Then there is my project car, an Nissan Skyline that I've been slowly restoring in my garage. But my pride and joy is my Dodge Durango SRT. I put a lot of work into that beauty. Raised suspension, ram bar, the works. It's not just a car, it's a statement. Everything was going great until about 6 months ago when the Homeowners Association got a new president. And that's when things started to go downhill. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon. I was in my driveway giving the SRT a good wash when I heard someone clearing their throat behind me. I turned around to see a group of people standing there led by a woman I'd never seen before. "Excuse me, sir. I am the new president of the Homeowners Association. We need to talk about your vehicle." Okay. What about it? "I'm here to remind you about Homeowners Association Rule 6, Section 4. Any and all modified cars are not to be parked on a street or driveways." I raised an eyebrow, already feeling annoyed. Well, I am not part of the Homeowners Association, so that rule doesn't apply to my driveway. I won't park it on the street, but I can and will park it on my driveway. The woman's face twisted into a scowl. Your vehicle is hanging over the sidewalk by about 2 inches. That's a safety hazard. Look, my SRT is about the same length as my driveway. I need that space to open my garage door. It's barely over the sidewalk and it's not inconveniencing anyone. Well, can't you just put it in your garage? Without a word, I walked over and opened my garage door. The space was filled with tools and parts, with my Skyline project taking up most of the room. As you can see, there is no space. I'm working on another car. And that's when she lost it. Rule 6, Section 3 says you cannot modify your cars in your driveway or garage. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I'm in no way affiliated with the Homeowners Association. If you look for my house in the association files, you'll see that my house is not part of it. Now please exit my property before I call the cops on you for trespassing. The woman started shouting incoherently. The other association members with her looked uncomfortable. One of them says, "Ma'am, he's right. His house isn't part of our jurisdiction. We should go." They started to leave, but as they did, the woman kicked at a wrench I'd left on the ground. It flew through the air and hit something with a yelp. My heart sank as I realized it had struck my cat, who'd been lounging nearby. What the hell? You just hit my cat. It's not my fault you left your tools lying around. Before I could respond, they were gone. I rushed over to check on my cat. He seemed okay, but I wanted to be sure. The next day, after a very expensive emergency vet visit, I left a bill at the woman's door. It was over $500, which I thought was more than fair considering she'd assaulted my pet. Later that afternoon, my doorbell rang. It was her again, looking furious. "How dare you leave this bill at my door? I'm not paying for your mangy cat." "You injured my pet. You're responsible for the vet bills." "Absolutely not. This is harassment." "Fine. Then I'll see you in court." She stormed off and I immediately started gathering evidence and looking for a lawyer. The court date arrived faster than I expected. I was nervous but determined, and to my surprise, the woman showed up with the Homeowners Association lawyers. That seemed like overkill for a simple small claims case, but I wasn't complaining. The judge says, "Let's hear the plaintiff's side." I explained the situation, showing the vet bills and a written statement from a neighbor who had witnessed the incident. "Your Honor, all I'm asking for is reimbursement for the vet bills caused by the defendant's actions." And the defense? To my amazement, the woman launched into a tirade about my cars, the Homeowners Association rules, and how I was ruining the neighborhood's aesthetics. She never once denied kicking the wrench. "He shouldn't have left that wrench out. It is his fault." "Ma'am, did you or did you not kick the wrench that injured the plaintiff's cat?" "Well, yes, but..." That is all I need to hear. Judgment for the plaintiff. However, given the defendant's clear disregard for others' property and pet safety, I'm tripling the damages. The defendant is ordered to pay $1,500 to the plaintiff. The woman's jaw dropped. I couldn't believe it either. But that's not fair." This court is adjourned. As we left the courtroom, I overheard some of the Homeowners Association members talking. One of them said, "I can't believe she used our lawyers for this. This is going to look terrible for us. We need to call an emergency meeting." I went home feeling vindicated, but I knew it wasn't over. Sure enough, about a week later, I got a letter in my mailbox. It was from the Homeowners Association apologizing for their president's behavior and informing me that she had been removed from her position. For a while after that, things were peaceful. No one bothered me about my cars, and I even saw a few other modified vehicles start to appear in driveways around the neighborhood. The ex-president still lived across the street, but she kept to herself, only occasionally glaring at me when I'd work on my cars. One day, as I was putting the finishing touches on my Skyline, I heard a knock on my garage door. It was one of my neighbors, a guy I'd waved to but never really talked to. "Hey man, I've been admiring your cars for a while now. That Skyline is sweet. I was wondering if you could give me some advice on my project car." "Sure. What are you working on?" "An old Mustang. I'm having some trouble with the suspension." "No problem. Let me grab my tools and I'll come take a look." As we walked over to his house, I noticed the ex-president watching us from her window. But for once, she didn't look angry. She looked sad, maybe even a little envious. And that's when I realized something. All this time, she'd been trying to control everything around her, and it had only pushed people away. Meanwhile, my passion for cars was bringing the neighborhood together in a way her rules never could. From that day on, my driveway became the unofficial gathering spot for the neighborhood gearheads. We'd work on cars, swap stories, and enjoy each other's company. Even some of the homeowners association members would stop by, curious about what we were up to. As for the ex-president, she eventually moved away. I heard that she'd found a gated community with even stricter rules. I almost felt bad for her new neighbors. Almost. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a Skyline to take for a test drive.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.